Welcome to Dirty Secrets, the channel where the truth can't stay hidden. This story isn't just about infidelity. It's about betrayal from both sides, love and friendship. Emily lost her husband. She lost her best friend. But in the process, she found herself. For many of us, betrayal is something we think happens to other people. We imagine it as a distant storm. Ugly, yes, but far away. We believe our loved ones, our partners, our closest friends, would never be the ones to betray us. And yet when it does happen, when trust is shattered by the very people we thought would protect it, the pain is unlike anything else. It cuts deeper than anger, deeper than grief. Because betrayal is not just about what someone did, it's about who they were supposed to be. This is the story of Emily, but it's also a story about resilience. It's about discovering strength in the middle of devastation. And it's a reminder for anyone listening that sometimes losing people is the only way to find yourself again. Emily wasn't extraordinary in the way movies might portray heroes. She didn't live in a glamorous city, nor did she have some high-powered career that demanded everyone's attention. She was ordinary, and yet her life was full. She had David, her husband of 9 years, a man who, at least on the surface, seemed stable, reliable, and committed. They met in college, sharing notes over endless cups of coffee in the library, laughing at professors' quirks, and dreaming about the kind of future they might one day build. David was never the loudest in the room. He wasn't flashy, but he had a steadiness to him, something that made Emily feel safe. He was the kind of person who remembered her coffee order, who carried groceries without being asked, who kissed her on the forehead just before falling asleep. And then there was Sarah, Emily's best friend since childhood. They grew up just 2 streets apart. Sleepovers, shared secrets, heartbreaks, and victories. They went through it all together. Sarah was the outgoing one, the one who pushed Emily out of her comfort zone. When Emily doubted herself, Sarah was there to lift her up. When Emily got married, Sarah stood beside her as maid of honor, tears streaming down her face during the vows. To anyone looking from the outside, Emily's world was enviable, a solid marriage, a best friend who was like family. It was the kind of support system people long for. But the thing about betrayal is this: it never announces itself. It doesn't come crashing in with flashing lights. It creeps in quietly. It grows in the shadows. And when it finally reveals itself, it feels like your entire reality collapses in a single moment. Emily didn't see it coming. Not at first. There were no obvious signs, no glaring red flags. But looking back later, she would realize the cracks had been there all along. It began with little things. David suddenly had late nights at work. Sarah seemed busier too, sometimes canceling plans last minute. Individually, these things made sense. Life gets hectic. Schedules change. But together, they formed a pattern. Emily noticed small shifts in their behavior when they were around each other. Nothing dramatic, just subtle. A glance that lingered a second too long. A laugh that seemed slightly forced, slightly too intimate. The kind of things you brush off because who would want to believe the worst about the 2 people you trust most? So Emily brushed it off. She told herself she was imagining things, that she was overthinking, being insecure, maybe even jealous of their closeness. After all, wasn't it good that her husband and her best friend got along? But sometimes, denial is just another word for survival. The truth came suddenly. Not because Emily was searching for it, not because she set out to uncover anything, but because betrayal has a way of revealing itself, whether we want it to or not. One evening, Emily borrowed David's phone. It was innocent. Her own phone had died and she needed to check an email for work. She wasn't snooping. She wasn't suspicious. But when she opened his messages, there it was. A conversation that should never have existed. Words that were too intimate to be explained away. Not just casual banter, not just friendship, but confessions, inside jokes, and plans made in secret. Emily's chest tightened. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. The world around her blurred, as if reality itself had been ripped apart. Her husband, her best friend, together. At that moment, Emily felt 2 kinds of death. the death of her marriage, and the death of a friendship that had defined her entire life. She confronted them. There were tears, excuses, stammered apologies. David insisted it just happened. Sarah claimed she never meant to hurt her. But betrayal is never an accident, it's a choice, and they had both chosen themselves over her. The days that followed were a blur. Emily moved through her house like a ghost. Rooms that once held laughter now echoed with silence. Her phone, once filled with texts from Sarah, now sat dark and empty. Her bed, once a place of comfort, now felt cold and unfamiliar. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like numbness, like sitting in the same spot for hours, unable to move, like staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., replaying conversations in your head, wondering how you missed the signs. Betrayal is not just about what you lose. It's about the questions it leaves behind. Was any of it real? Did they ever love me? Was our friendship just a lie? Emily wrestled with these questions day and night, and the hardest part wasn't losing David. It wasn't even losing Sarah. It was losing the version of herself who believed she could trust them. Emily's story may sound specific, but betrayal is a universal wound. It's something many have felt, though not everyone speaks about it. Maybe for you it wasn't a husband, maybe it wasn't a best friend, maybe it was a parent who wasn't there when you needed them most, or a colleague who stabbed you in the back at work, or someone you trusted with your secrets who used them against you. The circumstances differ, but the pain is the same. The shattering of trust, the questioning of your own worth, the sudden realization that the ground beneath you was never as solid as you believed. And yet, as painful as it is, betrayal also carries within it a strange gift, because when everything falls apart, you are forced to face yourself. And in that confrontation, you discover truths you might never have otherwise found. For weeks, Emily struggled. She withdrew from social circles. She avoided mutual friends, not wanting to answer questions or relive the humiliation. She cried when no one was watching, and sometimes she didn't cry at all because she was too numb to feel. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't as if she woke up one morning and declared herself healed. No, healing rarely works that way. It began with small acts of survival, getting out of bed, making herself breakfast, taking a walk outside, even when she didn't want to. And then came the realizations. Moments where she recognized that while David and Sarah had taken so much from her, there were still parts of her life they could never touch. Her passions, her dreams, her ability to rebuild. Emily began journaling, at first just fragments of thoughts, scribbles of anger and grief. But over time, those pages became a mirror. They showed her not only her pain, but also her strength. And here's where Emily's story connects to all of us. Because betrayal will come, in some form, to every life. Maybe not as extreme, maybe not as devastating, but no one is immune to disappointment. The question is not, will you be betrayed? The question is, what will you do when it happens? For Emily, losing David and Sarah wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a stronger one. Healing from betrayal isn't linear. It isn't a clean progression from pain to peace. It's messy. It's full of setbacks, of nights where the loneliness feels unbearable, of mornings where the first thought in your head is still them. Emily had many of those nights. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories like broken film reels. The vacations they took together, the secrets she whispered to Sarah at sleepovers, the way David used to hold her hand in crowded places. Were those moments lies? Were they performances? Or were they real once before everything fell apart? The human mind struggles with contradictions. We want clean answers. Either it was real or it wasn't. But betrayal doesn't work that way. Sometimes the love was real, and so was the betrayal. Both can coexist, tangled together in a way that feels impossible to untangle. And that is what made the night so heavy for Emily. Not just the pain of what happened, but the uncertainty of what was ever true. But if the nights were long, the days held a different challenge. Because life doesn't pause for heartbreak. The bills still come, the deadlines still loom. The world keeps spinning, even when yours feels like it has stopped. Emily forced herself into routines, not because she felt strong, but because survival required it. She began each morning with a simple ritual, making coffee, sitting by the window, and writing one sentence in her journal. Some mornings it was, "I hate them." Other mornings, "I don't know how to do this." And slowly, eventually, the sentences changed. "I'm still here. I'm stronger than I was yesterday." Rituals like these are small. They seem insignificant. But in the aftermath of betrayal, they are lifelines. They remind you that you are still in control of something, even when so much has been taken. To understand why betrayal hurts so deeply, we must look beyond the act itself. Because betrayal is not just about what someone does, it's about what they break. Trust. And trust is the invisible fabric that holds every relationship together. When a stranger hurts us, it stings, but it doesn't destroy us because we never gave them our trust in the first place. But when the people closest to us betray us, the wound is deeper than the act. It's the violation of the belief that they were supposed to protect us, not harm us. This is why betrayal can feel worse than grief. In grief, we mourn what was lost. But in betrayal, we mourn what was stolen. Emily began to understand this over time. It wasn't just that David cheated. It wasn't just that Sarah lied. It was that they, the two people who should have valued her most, chose their own desires over her well-being. There's a stage in every betrayal where anger becomes your constant companion. Emily felt it too. Some days it burned so hot she wanted to scream. Other days it simmered quietly, fueling her as she moved through her routines. Anger is often portrayed as negative, but in the right measure, anger is survival. It is the force that insists, "I deserve better than this." It is the voice that says, "I will not be defined by their choices." But anger alone cannot sustain you. It is a spark, not a destination. And Emily knew if she stayed there forever, she would never heal. But anger alone cannot sustain you. It is a spark, not a destination. And Emily knew if she stayed there forever, she would never heal. So she began to practice acceptance, not forgiveness, not yet. That comes later, if at all. But acceptance. The recognition that what happened, happened. That no amount of replaying the past would undo it. Acceptance isn't easy. It doesn't feel fair. But it is necessary because it allows you to stop asking why them and start asking what now. Life without David and Sarah felt strange at first. The people she once shared her most intimate moments with were gone. The inside jokes, the holidays, the phone calls at midnight, all of it had vanished. But slowly, Emily began to see this not only as a loss, but as an opening. Because sometimes, when people leave your life, they create space for new growth. She started reconnecting with old hobbies, painting, reading novels she had long abandoned, going for walks in the park near her home, breathing in air that somehow felt fresher than before. And she started meeting new people, not in a rush, not in a desperate attempt to replace what she had lost, but naturally through work, through community events, through the slow rhythm of daily life. Each new interaction was a reminder. The world is bigger than betrayal. Life is larger than the people who broke you. And here, again, is where Emily's story becomes more than just her own. Because betrayal teaches us a cruel but vital lesson. Not everyone who loves you will be loyal to you. Not everyone who smiles at you has your best interests at heart. But that doesn't mean trust should die. It doesn't mean you must live in suspicion, shutting out everyone to avoid being hurt again. It means you learn to trust differently. Not blindly, not naively, but wisely. And most importantly, betrayal forces you to trust the one person who can never abandon you, yourself. Months passed, seasons changed, and Emily changed with them. She wasn't the same woman who once believed her world revolved around David and Sarah. She wasn't the same woman who cried herself to sleep every night. She was stronger, not because she wanted to be, but because survival demanded it. Her laughter returned, slowly at first, then fully. Her sense of self grew clearer. And one day, she realized something profound. She no longer thought of them every hour of every day. Healing had crept in quietly, the way betrayal once had. Not with an announcement, but with a soft, steady presence. Here's the truth. Everyone listening at some point will face a betrayal that changes them. It may come from a partner. It may come from a friend. It may even come from yourself, in the form of choices you regret. But Emily's story reminds us that betrayal is not the end. It is not the final chapter. It is the fire that forges us into someone stronger, wiser, more aware of our own worth. So if you've been betrayed, or if you're carrying the scars of a past betrayal, remember this. Their actions do not define you. Their disloyalty does not diminish your value. And their absence does not mean your story is over. Because for Emily, losing David and Sarah wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. And the same can be true for you. Forgiveness is one of the hardest concepts to grasp after betrayal. People often confuse it with reconciliation, as if forgiving means welcoming someone back into your life. But that isn't true. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. It's the act of loosening the chains that bind you to the past, so you can walk forward without dragging the weight of anger behind you. Emily didn't forgive David and Sarah overnight. In fact, for a long time, the very idea felt impossible. Why should she forgive people who destroyed her trust? Why should she release them from the responsibility of what they had done? But as time passed, she began to realize something. Forgiveness wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about letting herself off the hook. She deserved peace. She deserved freedom from the endless loop of, why me and how could they? And slowly, in her own time, Emily chose forgiveness. Not to erase the past, but to reclaim her future. One of betrayal's cruelest tricks is convincing you that you weren't enough. That somehow if you had been prettier, smarter, funnier, or more exciting, the people you loved wouldn't have betrayed you. Emily wrestled with these lies for months. She asked herself, was I not a good enough wife? Was I not a good enough friend? But with time and with reflection, she came to see the truth. Betrayal is not a reflection of the betrayed, it's a reflection of the betrayer. David's infidelity wasn't proof that Emily lacked value. It was proof that he lacked integrity. Sarah's disloyalty wasn't evidence that Emily failed as a friend. It was evidence that Sarah failed as one. And once Emily embraced this truth, something inside her shifted. Her confidence returned. Her sense of worth was no longer tied to how others treated her, but to how she treated herself. Time has a way of softening sharp edges. Months became years, and Emily found herself stepping into new chapters of life. She didn't rush into a new relationship. Instead, she focused on building a relationship with herself. She traveled. She explored new hobbies. She built friendships with people who proved their loyalty through action, not words. Eventually, love did come back into her life, but it wasn't desperate or rushed. It wasn't about filling a void left by David. It was about sharing the strength she had already built within herself. This time, Emily entered love not with blind trust, but with wise trust. Not with dependency, but with confidence. And it was healthier, stronger, real. Losing Sarah was its own kind of death. The end of a friendship that had spanned decades. The loss of a person who had been woven into every chapter of her life story. But as Emily healed, she realized something important. Some friendships are seasonal. They serve a purpose for a time, and when that time ends, clinging to them only causes more harm. Sarah's betrayal closed one door, but it also opened others. Emily formed new friendships, not built on shared history, but on shared respect, honesty, and care. And she discovered that family isn't always the people you grew up with. Sometimes, family is the people who choose to stand by you when everything else falls apart. So what does Emily's journey teach us? It teaches us that betrayal can shatter us, but it can also shape us. That while losing people can feel like the end of the world, sometimes it is the very thing that pushes us into becoming who we were meant to be all along. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever cried yourself to sleep, wondering how someone you trusted could hurt you so deeply, if you've ever questioned your value because of someone else's actions, hear this. Their betrayal does not define you. Their choices do not determine your worth, and their absence does not mean your story is over. Sometimes losing people is the only way to find yourself again. Sometimes the breaking of trust is what allows you to build a stronger foundation. And sometimes the greatest gift betrayal gives you is you. For Emily, losing David and Sarah wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a stronger one. It teaches us that strength is not about avoiding pain, but about walking through it and coming out the other side still standing. It teaches us that self-worth cannot be handed to us by others. It must be built from within. And most of all, it teaches us that endings are often disguised beginnings. Life will test you, people will disappoint you, and betrayal will leave scars. But scars are not signs of weakness. They are signs of survival. Emily's story is not unique, and that's what makes it powerful. Because in her pain, we see our own, and in her strength, we find hope for ourselves. So remember this, no matter what has been taken from you, no matter who has walked away, you are still here, and your story is far from over.